Welcome to Mind Over Matter with your host Anya, where we dive into the powers of resilience, mindset, and personal growth. Today, I'm thrilled to have Andrew Matthews with us, an international best selling author and speaker whose books, including Being Happy, Follow Your Heart, and Bouncing Back, have sold over 8 million copies in 48 languages. Andrew has spoken to corporations, universities, and even prisons about the power of attitude, enjoying work, and building resilience. And today, he's sharing three essential tips to rebound from disappointment and disaster, something we all face at some point in life. How do we shift our mindset when everything feels like it's falling apart? Let's find out. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Nice to be here.
It's a pleasure. So, bouncing back from setbacks isn't easy. What's the first thing people should do when facing disappointment or failure?
I think the first thing is that we understand that acceptance is critical. When something happens that we don't like, when life knocks us down or when someone lets us down, maybe we lose a job or a relationship comes to an end, or maybe we break our leg. Our first reaction is going to be, well, this is the worst thing that could happen. This isn't fair. But and we might have the idea that if we don't accept what we don't like, then we won't be stuck with it. But in fact, the reverse is true. In order to move on, we need to accept those things that we don't like. And so acceptance is power. And what we might also understand is that it's those things, those challenges that we never really wanted, that turn us into the kinds of people that we want to be. So uh, we become extraordinary. We become extraordinary people by facing challenges that we didn't choose. So the number one thing is acceptance, being able to say, well, I wouldn't have chosen this, but I understand that I'm going to learn from this and I'll be better prepared for my next challenges if I take this on and do my best.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, how do we stop ourselves from getting stuck in self pity or overthinking?
Perspective helps. One of the first questions we can ask ourselves is, has anyone else ever survived this? Maybe we're broke and we say, life is terrible. How can I ever deal with this? We ask ourselves, has anyone else ever survived this? And of course they have. Um, I do a lot of speaking to corporations, and one of the men that I've shared the stage with in different countries is a guy called Nick Vujicic, born with no arms and no legs. Extraordinary man. Um, as a teenager, he tried to commit suicide. He spent years wondering, why am I even on this planet? Am I just here to be made fun of and to be bullied? But eventually, he changed his thinking and he stopped saying to himself, these are all the things that I can't do. And he began to ask himself, what is it that I can do? And what he realized that he could do was he could inspire other people with his courage and his story. And he's now the author of 6 best-selling books, international best-selling books. He's one of the world's highest paid speakers. What he reminds us is that other people have been through tougher things than we have. So perspective helps.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, you have written extensively about attitude and resilience. What mindset shift makes the biggest difference in overcoming tough times?
Firstly, we understand that happiness is very much a decision. We've all seen toddlers, 2-year-olds, who might be playing on the furniture at home, and they fall on their head. And the first thing they do is they look around. They look around to see who's watching. And based on the audience, they decide whether they're going to laugh or cry. And we think that's cute. But what we might not realize is that we behave in exactly the same way. We're out on the freeway, and someone cuts in front of us, and we have that opportunity to make an instant decision. Is this going to ruin my day? Or will I just perhaps decide that this guy is having a tough day and nothing he does is going to disturb my happiness? So we understand that happiness is a decision that we make every day. That's the starting point.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, can you share a real life story of someone who applied this and turned the situation around?
Well, let me give you my life story in that I have a stepson, Michael. When my wife Julie and I were married, um, Michael became my son, and when Michael was 18, he had a terrible car accident and suffered massive head injuries. He was rushed to the Royal Adelaide Hospital. I'm talking to you from Australia, where I live, and he was in a coma, and the doctors called a meeting at 6 o'clock that evening, and they said, "Your son is brain dead." They said, "We'd like to take his organs. That will help a lot of people." What are my wife and I to do? Someone says your son is brain dead. Uh, Julie, my wife, said, "Listen, you've got to give us some time." And she came back to the meeting and she said, "There must be something you can do." Uh, and they said, "Look, his brain is swelling inside his skull and it's killing him." She said, "Can you cut a piece of skull away so that you release the pressure? Maybe that will help." And they said it won't help. But she insisted that they do it and try it, which they reluctantly did. At 11 o'clock, the doctors called another meeting. They said, "His lungs have now collapsed. We told you they would. We'd now like to take his organs. It will help a lot of people." Uh, Julie said, um, "Give him 3 days. Just keep him on this respirator for 3 days, and you will never hear from me again." So that was the Monday. On the Thursday, all his family and friends, we gathered at the hospital with a priest to give Michael his last rites. And the doctors turned off the respirator, and Michael breathed, and Michael survived. Severely brain injured, he couldn't walk, he couldn't speak. He had to learn to eat all over again, and so began a 25-year rehabilitation process. And Michael is unable to have a job like any normal person. The boys that he went to school with are now barristers and businessmen, but not Michael. And people will often say to my wife, "How do you deal with having a severely disabled son?" And Michael will always say, and Julie will always say, "I still have him, and he's kind, and he's caring, and he's a beautiful soul." In other words, Julie focuses on what she has, and we focus on what we have. And so day by day, we have lived our life celebrating what we have Michael now lives a few minutes away from us in his own apartment and continues to be this beautiful soul and in an important part of our life. But we manage our way through that by focusing on what we have and realizing that there are people with greater struggles and greater challenges than we have.
That's so inspiring. So, many people feel like they have failed after a major setback. How do we reframe failure so it becomes a stepping stone instead of a dead end?
Well, one of the things we can realize is that most disasters are not total disasters. For example, um, you give your best to a job and you find after 6 months that either they let you go or you need to let yourself go. And the tendency, first of all, is to say, well, that was a failure. But if we look back and say, well, what are the things that I learned from that? What did I learn about the kind of job that I should apply for next time? Or what do I learn about dealing with difficult people that made that a job that I didn't enjoy? There's no disaster is a total disaster. Um, we come out of a relationship that we think, you know, I thought that was going to last forever, but it didn't. But we always come out of it if we're able to say, what was good about that? I mean, if you spent your time with somebody who you cared about, there had to be good things. So having a feeling of gratitude is critical. We say, why is gratitude important? Because you can't be grateful and miserable at the same time. You can't be grateful and angry at the same time. And so our happiness is very much about the questions that we ask ourselves. What do I like about my job? What do I like about where I live? What do I love about my wife or my boyfriend? So we're always having that discipline of saying, and that is what happy and resilient people do. Okay, so this didn't work or my life isn't perfect, but what's good about it?
Mm-hmm. Right. So, have you ever experienced a personal failure that later became a breakthrough moment?
Matt,
Mm-hmm.
I'm an author, so I've been an author for 35 years. I've published 12 books and they're now in 49 languages. So let me tell you about how I started. I wrote a children's book and I'd heard that it can be difficult to get published. So I didn't want to just send this book to one publisher and get rejected and send it to another publisher. I had what I thought was a genius plan. So I got 60 copies of my manuscript and I sent it off to 60 publishers who I believed were the most likely publishers all around the world who would like my book. And I thought, well, this is a great plan because I send this off to this new manuscript of mine that I'm excited about. I send it off to 60 publishers, at least 5 are going to like it or 3. And then I will choose who I want to publish my book. I thought that's good. So I sent off this first manuscript of mine, and within a couple of weeks, I'm beginning to get these rejection slips in the mail. And soon I've got 10, and then like 23, and then 35, and then 47 rejections, and then 57 rejections, and 58, and 59, and 60, and 61. One publisher wrote to me twice and said, forget it. So that was my first attempt to be an author. I wrote a second book. It was called Being Happy. And this time I was a bit more selective about who I sent that manuscript to. I sent the manuscript to 17 publishers who I thought would be most likely to want my new self-help book, Being Happy. And I got 17 rejections. But publisher number 18 sold 3 million copies. So what we might take from that is that, firstly, it took me 61 plus 17, like that's 78 rejections to get a book published. But every time you get a rejection, you're getting closer to getting a yes.
Mm-hmm. That's so fascinating. So you have spoken in universities and even prisons, two very different environments. So what have you learned about resilience from these experiences?
Well, I think we're all the same. And we all, everyone wants to be happy and everyone wants the secret to happiness. We very often need to be reminded about things that we already know. So, for example, whether I'm talking to brain surgeons or whether I'm talking to prisoners, I might remind them that, for example, complaining doesn't help. Here's the thing. We all know that we tend to talk about what we think about. If we think about food, we talk about food. But the reverse is also true. The things that we talk about, we tend to continue thinking about, which is why complaining is a bad idea, because the more that we complain to other people, the more that we continue to think about the things that we're complaining about, and the more miserable we are. So complaining is a waste of time. Another thing we learn about happy people is that happy people are kind people. It's the people that are considerate. It's the people that make an effort and go out of their way that are obviously the kindest people, but they're also the happiest people. That when we give other people compliments, they feel happier, but we also feel happier because we are looking for good things in people, and in looking for good things in other people, we tend to find them in ourselves. Um, One of the things that I share with many of my audiences is that we've got to at least like ourselves. People say, well, do you need to love yourself? You need to at least like yourself. Why? Because we create the life that we feel we deserve. And if I don't like myself, I will stay with a partner that treats me badly. I will probably stay working in a job where my boss treats me badly. I will probably punish myself with what I eat and what I drink, because I tell myself, well, it's only me. I will probably ignore exciting opportunities because I think, well, I'm not worth it, or it will never work anyway. We need to nurture ourselves, and we need to like ourselves. You say, well, how is it that we can like ourselves? Well, here's one thing we can do. Get a photograph of yourself when you were like 3 years old, when you were innocent, when you didn't have all the answers and you were just living life the best way you knew how. And put that photograph somewhere where you can see it, maybe on the refrigerator or on your desk. And treat yourself as you would treat that 3-year-old child, with the same caring and the same compassion, because you still don't have all the answers and you are still just living life the best way you know how.
Mm-hmm. That's a great way to look at it. So, are there any common patterns or beliefs that hold people back, regardless of their background?
What holds us back? I mean, a lot of it is self-image and what we believe we can have or what we believe that we deserve. Um, one of the things that can be really helpful is that we begin to imagine a better life for ourselves because we not only create the life that we feel we deserve, but we become what we think about. And if I continue to see myself stuck like I feel stuck now, then my life will continue to be stuck. But everything begins as an idea. Being more confident begins as an idea in your mind. Having a job that you love begins as an idea that you nurture. And it may seem like an impossible thing right now, but as I continue to imagine being in a job that I love, it becomes more of a reality and more possible until I begin to do the things and take the action that can lead me to that kind of job. Even happiness begins as an idea. We need to see ourselves as happy first before we can be happier. You say, what are the things that hold us back? And our habits hold us back. So if I was to ask you the question, what is more important to break a habit? Is it more important to have a clear goal of what I want to achieve? Or is it more important to have a lot of willpower? And actually, it's a trick question because a clear goal is helpful, but you can have a lot of people have a clear goal that I want to be thin, but they never get there. Willpower is helpful, but your self-image will always triumph over willpower. So what is most important is actually the third thing. Number three is how you see yourself. You have to see yourself as the person and in the situation and living the life that you want. So it's not about just having a clear goal. It's not about sheer willpower. When you see yourself as different, that is when you begin to move into a better and a happier life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, for someone listening right now who feels like they've hit rock bottom, what are three actionable steps they can take today to start bouncing back?
Okay, so number one is wherever you are, you accept it. You say, I wouldn't have chosen this, but I understand that acceptance is power. And my first step is to accept where I am and move on. Number two is break your challenges down into little chunks. Life is sometimes like climbing a mountain. If you're climbing a mountain and you get stuck on a ledge, the first thing you do is you begin to focus just on that ledge. In other words, you're saying, what is it that I need to do right now to save myself? And you're not worried about everything that could go wrong in the next month. You're not worried about all the bills that you need to pay in the next year. You're just focused on getting yourself off of that ledge. And similarly, when life gets tough, you focus on what's right in front of you. You say, I just need to do my very best today. I just need to give my best until bedtime and let tomorrow take care of itself. The next thing we understand is that when life gets tough and you get knocked down, you've got to get up because, I mean, what is the alternative? Do you just want to lay there? So you have to say, however I do it, whatever I do, I have to take action because, you know, the alternative is just disastrous. We also appreciate the importance of goal setting. Um, Whenever we set a goal, we we feel better. And if you ask any psychologist, any psychiatrist, what is the difference between unhappy people and happy people? Happy people feel more in control of their life, and depressed people tend to feel that I'm out of control and nothing helps. I'm hopeless and nothing matters, which is why it's helpful for us to set small goals and big goals, because every time we set a goal and in the beginning, manageable goals that we know that we can handle, we're feeling more in control of ourselves. And as a result, we feel more hopeful. So setting ourselves goals that are achievable is also critical.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, if you could give the younger self one piece of advice about resilience, what would it be?
One piece of advice about resilience,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that we understand that I've got a cartoon in my latest book, Bouncing Back, and there is a guy climbing a mountain, and he looks like he doesn't want to be there, and he's sweating, and even his dog is sweating. And the caption of the cartoon says, "What you thought was breaking you is probably making you." The message of that, of course, is that the things that we least want to go through are the things that turn us into the kinds of people that we want to be. That most disasters are not total disasters. Even, for example, um, you're at the airport, you're waiting to catch your plane, and just before boarding, you hear this announcement: your flight has been cancelled, and your next flight is going to leave in 7 hours' time. And you think, this is absolutely the last thing I want. But life is such that you can just bet that this last thing that you wanted and this last thing that you needed, you're probably going to meet someone in that airport that becomes a lifelong friend. I mean, so often we're in situations where you think, this is the last thing I wanted, and yet you meet someone or you spot an opportunity or something happens that changes your life. The fact is that also that many of the things that we try don't work. You know, you're trying to build a website, you're hoping people will come and they don't. You make a YouTube video hoping it's going to go viral and it doesn't. You go on a blind date hoping that you're going to meet someone special and it doesn't go that well. Many things that we do are not as successful as we might have hoped. But at the same time, usually when we least expect it, something happens or we meet somebody that is more wonderful than we could have imagined, and life will always surprise us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, Andrew, your insights on resilience, mindset, and the power of attitude have been truly inspiring. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today.
My pleasure.
Mhm. And to our listeners, setbacks don't define you, but how you respond to them does. If you're feeling stuck, remember, your next breakthrough might just be one mindset shift away. Be sure to check out Andrew's book, Bouncing Back, for more powerful strategies on resilience. Until next time, keep your mind strong, your heart open, and never stop bouncing back.